Welcome back to Common Ground, an inside look at Suffolk County. I'm your host, Sheriff Steve Tompkins. Now, as I mentioned before the break, we have a true icon from the city of Boston, and that would be Mayor Raymond Flynn, and he's going to talk to us about a whole host of things. And so I'm going to shut up and turn it over. Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for coming.
Sheriff, it's great to be with you. I'm a big admirer of yours.
Oh, likewise. Oh,
I
that's
voted
a two-way
for you
street.
too, even better.
Okay, then. I appreciate that. You know, I came up from New York City in 1977 to attend Boston College. And although I was up in Newton and lived in the Brighton-Austin area, I vividly remember your race against Mel King way back when. That really was. But you know what I liked about that campaign, and I didn't know politics as intimately as I do now, is that it was civil. It was a civil campaign.
It really was.
You know?
Mel is a special friend of mine. Yeah. Mel and I played basketball against each other as kids.
Oh,
He's
no
a
kidding.
Little bit older than
so
me,
you guys were way back.
Way back, yeah. Mel played for the South End Boys Club. I played for South Boston Boys Club, and we played ball against each other. But most people, I'm glad you recognize that, Sheriff, that even though we were on the opposite sides in the most contested election in modern Boston history, over 70% of the people turned out to vote.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that percent. Wow, 70%. I didn't realize that.
It was extraordinary.
Yeah.
And that's in the black area and the working class neighborhoods of Boston. People were invested in that campaign. They really saw an opportunity for change. And, you know, the city was going through some difficult times.
Yeah, sure.
And so Mel and I owed it to the city to work together, even though we were campaigning against each other. So it was really a great day, great election for Boston, but Mel and I have remained friends all these years. So
let me ask you, though, moving forward through the decades, what brought about this partisan divide? Maybe not so much in the Commonwealth, but when you look at what's going on in D.C., where our public servants who we sent to do the people's business can't seem to sit down and civilly figure out how to do the people's business.
You're absolutely right. That's the best question. A lot of it has to do, I worked on national campaigns, so I've been involved in politics for almost 50 years, going back to Humphrey, John McCormick, Bill Clinton, all these different folks. Sheriff, what it basically comes down to is politics have changed dramatically over the years. It's special interests. Powerful groups now control politics. It's not the party. It's not liberals or conservatives or Democrats or Republicans. It's powerful special interest groups. What do they say? They say money, media, and message that controls politics today. Well, average people don't have the money to have an influence in politics. They don't have the media. It can cost so much to put these.
It sure does.
And so even if you have the message, you have a good working class message, it's still not enough to win the White House or win the United States Senate. That's what's happening, and so therefore the politicians are really obligated to all these powerful special interests, the Wall Street types and the banks and so forth, and they have to, they're obligated to them. And so when they ultimately go to Washington, D.C., they're obligated to go along with some of their agenda, which is causing so much polarization, partisanship, and it's bad for politics. But more importantly than that, Steve, it's bad for the country. I really believe it is bad for the country. There is no unity, and that's why you see so many people disappointed with both political parties.
It's tragic, and the amount of money, the Citizens United ruling, where corporations are now looked at as people, and you can just pump so much money into these campaigns. You're right. It really does take you off of message, and you can't really continue to really serve people the way that
and the people are getting different. The people are getting information about politicians through different sources, paid political commercials. When I was running, you go out there and you knock on the door and you climb the 3rd floor and you ask Mrs. Jones for a vote.
Exactly.
But that's not the way it is now. Right now, you put a lot of money on the table, give it to these corporate executives to promote a TV spot for you, and that's how you reach Mrs. Jones, unfortunately.
It's ridiculous. So now, when I got to Boston, by the time I came here, I wasn't that familiar with Mayor White's term or time in office, but the thing that always resonated with me about you is that you really were in the neighborhoods. You were really in the communities. And one of the things that I love about the Commonwealth, well, more so down in southeastern Massachusetts, is that you have these neighborhoods and these communities that really stay intact. Okay, I just came off a campaign, but I would meet people that are still buddies now in their 30s and 40s and 50s that were buddies back in elementary school. Talk to us about how important it is to have vibrant neighborhoods and vibrant communities.
Well, neighborhood pride was pretty prevalent at the time, as I mentioned Mel King and South End, but everybody could identify with their own neighborhood. And you knew everybody there, and the neighbors were working class, decent, good neighbors.
Right.
Clean their sidewalks, clean their streets, shovel their streets.
Right.
And helped out and looked out for one another. Right. And that was the Boston in those days. And people took great interest and pride. And like, you know, I played a lot of sports in my day, and even playing here at White Stadium, South Boston versus East Boston, or Dorchester versus English, BC High, all these different schools had that neighborhood pride. We used to fill White Stadium, 12, 13,000 people used to turn out. Wow. Now you get like 400 or 500 people if you're lucky. So in that regard, I think a lot of that personal pride in neighborhoods has dissipated, unfortunately. And you know, Boston has lost a little bit of that flavor and that glamour that we enjoyed, we loved growing up.
Did you come from a civically engaged family?
No, I didn't really, to be honest with you. My father was a dock worker. He spent 5 years in the hospital because he had tuberculosis related to his workforce, which was prevalent, you know, at that time in Boston. A lot of diseases and sicknesses. My mother was a cleaning woman, so we didn't really have any political power, but we were engaged in neighborhoods in the church. We loved our church.
Did you come from a large family?
Five boys.
Okay.
One brother played professional baseball. I played professional basketball. My other brother was a highly decorated Vietnam veteran. Wow. So, you know, we were all involved in the neighborhood and kind of helped out and all that. But sports was a principal. Sports more so than politics with me was what I was really interested in.
How'd you make the transition into politics?
Well, I started what I think became the Boston Neighborhood Basketball League.
Okay.
And I ran into some roadblocks, politically speaking, because there just wasn't enough youth programs, and I wanted to get a lot of youth programs started in Boston. So all my friends who saw me through school and high school and college said, Ray, you know, you got a pretty popular name in Boston through sports and academics. Why don't you run for office? So I did, and there it is. I ran for office in 1970, and I won, and I've been still doing it.
So the thing that I appreciate about Ray Flynn is, as I mentioned, being a man of the people, being a man of the neighborhoods. But talk to us about leaving the city to go to Rome to work for the Pope.
Well, actually, Steve, it was one of the best decisions that Kathy, my wife, and I made because, you know, you know politics. You're out there. I see you at all these different meetings. I saw you at Kevin Honen's party over there in Brighton.
Yep.
And you're out there in the neighborhoods, but you have to do a lot of sacrifice.
Yeah, tell me about it.
But in 3 or 4 meetings a night, when I was the United States ambassador, I took all my kids with me. We were over in Rome. And it was wonderful at the Vatican. And I was very close friends with John Paul II. I'm still close to Pope Francis. And I had a lot of issues that I was very interested in. For example, like this healthcare issue, which the Vatican plays a big role in healthcare. So working with the Vatican on healthcare, or working on peace and justice movement in Bosnia, in Somalia. I traveled in Africa, in the AIDS epidemic in Africa. I traveled to all these in Rwanda during the genocide. So I had a role in all those places, the diplomatic relations between the Catholic Church and Israel. So I learned an awful lot, but I was also able to spend a lot of quality time with my family. That's what
awesome.
I really enjoyed about it. I wasn't going to meetings every single night. I was able to spend time with my family, but also do constructive things that were important to me as a person.
Now, did you actually live at the Vatican or outside? Oh, you did?
We had a beautiful home just right outside the Vatican walls. Yeah, we're there almost 5 years.
Okay.
And as I say, I got to meet many prominent people. You know, I had known people like Nelson Mandela and Mother Teresa was a great friend of mine, and John Paul II.
Wow.
All these different people that that I became close friends with over the years.
Now, how did you get tapped? How did that happen? How did you actually come to go to the Vatican and do that work?
Well, I was a coordinator for President Clinton's campaign.
Right.
And I saw in the Newton magazine, I was going to run for governor, and I saw in the magazine, Time magazine, I guess it was, that Ray Flynn was going to be the Secretary of Labor.
Okay.
So that sounds okay, and I joined the cabinet. The next thing that happened, the president called me up and he said, look, I need you to go to the Vatican because it's the world's most important diplomatic listening post, and we need you because of your unique relationship with John Paul II and the Catholic Church to be the United States representative to the Vatican, and that's what I did. And no regrets. It was the best decision that I ever made. Learned a lot. Took up writing and was able to create a lot of opportunities for different people, for other people, through my travel, and particularly in human rights and civil rights, and in areas of underprivileged communities where I was able to coordinate between the President of the United States and Pope John Paul II.
But the interesting thing about what you just said is you're also making a contribution to global communities, global society, which is, we all don't get a chance to do that. You know,
it's a unique opportunity, even to this day, Steve. I'm very active in adult stem cell research. And I was at the Vatican recently, and the Catholic Church is in the forefront of that issue. I have a little grandson who was born with a rare undiagnosed neurological disease. So I coach him in baseball, I coach him in soccer, and I coach all these kids in the South Shore. And so I'm doing things that really, in my opinion, make me not only make me productive, but it's the best cause that I've ever been involved in, but also help a lot of people. So I'm going to keep doing those things. I'm doing a lot of writing. I just came back from New York last night. I was in New York for the world premiere of the movie Selma. And they're the fourth time I've seen it. Yeah. And so I'm doing a lot of writing and doing a lot of those things.
So I want to ask you about stem cell research. I want to ask you about writing, but before I do that, you referenced that you know Pope Francis.
Right.
And his messages, the message that's coming forth from Pope Francis and the Vatican is a little different from what we may have heard from past popes. What's your thoughts on that? And do you think that it will really benefit the conversation around the Catholic Church and moving forward?
It really, he's a unique person. He is, what you see is who he actually is. Right. He's a humble. Humility is the one word that comes to my mind when I think of Pope Francis. I remember meeting him about 5 or 7 years ago, and he was in a coffee shop in Rome. And we just stood there at the coffee shop, and we were talking away, and he had, he knew me because I did some work in some of the agencies that he was involved in. Right. But a very humble and genuine man. And Steve, when somebody ever says, who am I to judge? You know what I mean? God, that had such a powerful impact on me, because I never was very judgmental about people. I accept people for who they are, for their strengths and their weaknesses. And that's what I believe as a Catholic. That's what I always felt as a politician. Right. And as a person. And to hear the leader of the Roman Catholic Church, 1.5 billion people worldwide, making that kind of a comment, it really resonates with me. I love humble people because I come from a very humble family background. Right. And so that's why I love this man so much.
It's interesting that you mentioned in reference talking about being humble and humble people, because as you go through politics, you can become somewhat jaded. And the point that I'll make is this. So I remember just right after the election, and we were fortunate to win this election, someone approached me and they congratulated us and they said, so how does it feel to be a celebrity? Which I actually thought it was ridiculous, because it's not celebrity. There's that aura of what people perceive to be celebrity, but it's not. Listen, the way I look at it, sir, is I'm the sheriff now, but there were sheriffs before me, there's going to be sheriffs after me. It's what we do and what my administration gets accomplished for the people that have put us there in this period of time, and then you go home. I don't think it's about celebrity. And so remaining humble and not getting jaded by all of that is, it can be tough. And so, you know, it sounds like your upbringing was one that allowed you to remain a humble man.
Well, you know, I don't know you all that well, but I've followed you as closely as I possibly could. I get the impression that you're a very humble man, that you're a concerned man. I know I know the work that you're doing down here at the sheriff's office. That's very, very important, because what I heard you say one time is when these people leave the jail, they're going back out into the community. They're going to be my neighbors.
That's right.
They're going to be productive citizens, hopefully. What you do inside the jail is going to determine what kind of city we have.
Absolutely right. Absolutely. We really believe that while we have the folks with us, in fact, we're having some conversations now about creating an innovation zone inside the department. And why is that? Because a lot of these folks, and 85% of the folks that are there, have had some involvement with drugs. 42% present with some form of mental illness. So a case can be made for the fact that they should be in a mental health bed or a detox bed and not in a jail cell. But while they're there, I want to occupy their brain matter with something outside of their present existence, you see, and challenge them to be more than they can be. But talk to me about stem cell research.
Well, it's my grandson was born with a rare neurological disease. All the great doctors and all the professionals that we have don't know what's wrong with them, unfortunately. But he's not alone. There's thousands and thousands of these kids, not only in Massachusetts, but across the country. So I was invited, because of the Holy Father, to go to Rome to be with 400 of the world's leading medical experts, scientists, and made a presentation myself, told the Braden story. That's my grandson's name. And I got connected to this Christian Drapeau, who's a scientist from Canada. And he's been very active in the area of adult stem cell regeneration. So in other words, you can, without medical operation, you can have pills, a supplement, dietary supplement. You can take pills and you can take a stimulant that helps restore the dysfunctional parts of your body, whether it's your brain, hopefully, or if it's a part of your arm, like Peyton Manning, the great football player, and the shoulder and neck. So that's what stem cell has great potential of helping people who are distressed because of medical problems. And I kind of talk about that wherever I go, and it gives people hope that, you know, you don't put kids, young people back into a hospital and let them stay there. I'm out there coaching them in baseball and soccer, and letting them become productive and letting them feel like they're part of society. And hopefully there'll be a medical breakthrough to help these young people.
Well, that's what I want to ask you about society and how they perceive utilizing stem cell research. Depending upon who you talk to, maybe more so a few years ago than now, there was this kind of, well, I'm not sure if we should really look into that seriously as a way to address different medical or health issues. The conversation seems to have changed now, where there's more of an acceptance of that. Is that what you're finding?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. There was a bit of a problem. And the problem was people were getting confused, like Michael J. Fox, the great actor. You know, he was talking about embryonic stem cell, for example, that's to be distinguished from adult stem cell. You have adult stem cells in your body. I can extract adult stem cells from your body, put it into a distressed part of your body, whether it's your elbow or your ankle or something, and it regenerates and makes it a healthy part of your body. But the umbilical cord and embryonic is something that the Catholic Church and many religious people oppose, because it's the unwanted taking of a life. So that's the big difference. So hopefully I'm educating people to make the distinction that embryonic stem cell is not acceptable in many places, but adult stem cell offers great hope in prospects for the future.
Well, to tell you the truth, you just educated me, because I didn't know of that distinction between the two.
And don't feel alone, because I'd say 90% of the people in America don't know the distinction. That's why I appreciate coming on this program and speaking other places to make that distinction for people, good people.
So let me talk to me about your career as a writer now. You know, I read your articles in the Boston Herald, and they're great pieces. But How did that begin? How did that happen?
I think I always had a bit of a creative mind. You know, I love the movies. My wife and I love the movies. We could watch movies all day long.
Right.
And I met so many fascinating people. And I met people that were often misunderstood. Their stories were never told.
Right.
And so I see character and I see, you know, people that have a great story to tell. So I wrote a couple of books when I was over at Providence College and then at Harvard. I had a couple of great teachers. And I wrote a book, The Accidental Pope, which was number 4 on the best.
Yeah, I actually have that book.
Well, you're gonna be my campaign manager now. You're fresh off a victory. I wrote a screenplay for The Accidental Pope. And I think it would make a fascinating movie. And I was down in New York Sunday with Oprah Winfrey. And so they have my screenplay. Hopefully, you're going to be looking at a movie writer.
Wouldn't that be great? That'd be something. No, I think it's extraordinary, you know, that you're doing this. But I also think, sir, frankly, that your life story, you know, is an example for a lot of us to follow. When you talk about, you know, there but for the grace of God, go I, you know, and being a humble man and just giving back to society. I think that's really what makes society rich and vibrant. When you talk about diversity, I wouldn't want to be in a place where everybody looked like me or thought like me. I think it's our differences are our strengths. And I think that's what really makes a vibrant
Yesterday
community.
we were waiting in the train, or Sunday we were waiting in the train, South Station, the Dukakis Transportation Center now. Kathy and I, we got there early. And a lot of homeless people in the South Station. And they're sitting around there, and I saw one guy, bought him a cup of coffee and a donut. I hope the Herald covers this, writes this article, features this article. But I never had such a great time talking to so many interesting homeless people, you know, down in their luck, as my mother would say, and street people. But they have a story and they have character and they have a story to tell. And I love talking to them and telling their story, so people will understand that these are real people and they deserve our respect. I think that's your strength. Is showing respect to people, particularly your guests at the Charles Street Jail. And that's what life is all about, Sheriff. It's all about showing each other respect. You don't have to agree with everybody, but show them respect.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you say that. I came up in a single-parent household in Harlem in the projects. And the big thing for my mom, because she had to work a couple of jobs, you know, to take care of my sister and I, was manners. That was a big thing to her, you know. I could never call you Ray as a kid. It had to be Mr. Ray or Mr. Flynn or something to that effect. And I think that somewhere along the way, society has lost a little bit of that when you talk about manners and being mannerly and having respect for particularly folks that are older than you. I'm not talking about our seniors, but I'm talking about people that have walked before you, you know, because there's a lot to be learned if you just sit down sometimes and listen. You know, what is that saying? It's better to keep your mouth closed and be thoughtful than to open it and remove all doubt.
I have to tell you, you mentioned Harlem. When I was in high school, when I was in college, you know, I used to hitchhike down to Harlem on Saturday mornings to play basketball in Rikers.
You played in the Rikers.
Yeah, I played in the basketball team. And then Willie McDonough was a great reporter for the Boston Globe. Willie, sports writer.
Yep, I remember him.
And he wrote a feature story about me playing basketball down in Harlem. I was the only white kid playing on the whole playground.
I love it.
So they said, why are you down there? Why do you go all the way down to Harlem to play basketball? I says, why? Because that's where the best basketball players are. Jackie Jackson and Tommy Sanders and all these different guys that I played with. And I loved it.
So, folks, just let me say this to you. I'm glad, Mr. Mayor, that you said that, because I've said that to people in Boston about having the best ball players in Harlem, and I can't tell you how many times I've been taken to task.
Is this on TV? Yeah. I didn't know this was on TV. Well, you obviously know I'm not running for office anymore.
There it is. You know, no, so I appreciate that. Look, in closing, what message would you like to leave with, particularly youth? And we have a lot of kids that watch the program. What message would you like to leave with them about taking care of themselves and taking care of their families?
Well, they can be anybody or anything that they want to be if they're willing to work hard enough for it. You know, I wish I put as much time into my classroom studies as I did playing sports. But I did all right afterward, ultimately in classroom studies as well.
Right.
But just the poor kid coming from the neighborhoods of Boston, whether it's South Boston or Roxbury, Mattapian or Dorchester, West Roxbury, Charlestown, whatever it is, that person, that young person could be anybody they want to be. They can go to Providence, they go to Harvard, they can play sports, they can become good students, they can be mayor. You know, Mel King and I ran for mayor of Boston. Neither one of us had 10 cents to put together. But what we did was we were confident in ourselves, we were well prepared, and we tried as hard as we possibly could. It is up to the individual. Each kid out there, stay off drugs, stay away from any kind of substance problems, and you can become anybody you want. Grab a book, read it. I don't care what this topic is. Read, read, read. That's the most important thing. And then write a little narrative, a little synopsis about what you just read, and you'll become a writer and a great communicator.
Sir, I am honored to sit across this table today and just listen to, you know, what we've talked about, and we'd love to invite you back sometime when you have some time, you know, just to chat with us a little bit more.
You're the best. You're the best. I'm glad I voted for you.
Thank you, sir. So am I. Thank you so much. All right, folks, look, we're out of time. We're out of here. We'll be back again next week. And so until then, you take care of yourself, and we'll see you soon.